The cardboard box trembled
Outstanding work,
slightly
everyone.
in his
Thank
hands,
you so much, sir.
not
I
because
appreciate
it
it.
was heavy,
Very well
but
deserved.
because everything inside it carried the weight of a life that had just been taken away. Files, a framed photo of a smiling little girl with missing front teeth, a worn notebook filled with late-night ideas. Each item told a story of dedication that no one in that office seemed to remember anymore. As he walked past rows of desks where he had once been respected, even admired, the silence was louder than any farewell. No one stopped him. No one dared. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to give up, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the channel Kindness. Daniel Carter had never imagined that after 10 years of loyalty, he would leave the company like this, escorted out not by security, but by indifference. A single father who had raised his daughter Lily alone after losing his wife, Daniel had poured every ounce of his energy into both his job and his child. His mornings began with packing school lunches and tying shoelaces, and his nights ended with spreadsheets, reports, and dreams of building something meaningful. The company had been more than a workplace. It had been his second home, his stability, his hope. But hope had a way of being replaced by power. The announcement had come suddenly. The chairman's son, Ryan Whitmore, fresh out of an elite university with polished confidence and zero real-world experience, would take over Daniel's position as head of operations. The boardroom had applauded politely, not out of admiration, but out of obligation. Daniel had sat there quietly, his hands folded, his heart sinking with every word spoken about new vision and fresh leadership. He wasn't even given a chance to defend himself. No warnings, no performance concerns, just a decision made far above him, in a world where loyalty was invisible and connections were everything. The first week after Daniel's departure felt strange for everyone, though no one admitted it. Ryan walked through the office with an air of superiority, making quick changes without understanding the systems that had taken years to build. He dismissed long-standing processes as outdated and replaced them with flashy ideas that looked impressive on paper but lacked depth. Employees tried to adapt, but confusion began to spread. Deadlines were missed. Clients grew frustrated. Small cracks started appearing in what had once been a solid structure. Meanwhile, Daniel was adjusting to a different kind of reality. At home, he hid the truth from Lily at first. He didn't want her to worry. He still woke up early, still got dressed as if heading to work, but instead spent his days searching for new opportunities. Rejections came quickly and frequently. Companies wanted younger candidates, cheaper labor, or someone with connections. Daniel had none of those, only experience, integrity, and a quiet resilience that didn't show up on resumes. Bills began to pile up. Nights grew longer. Doubt crept in. But every evening, when Lily ran into his arms with her school stories and innocent laughter, Daniel found the strength to keep going. He reminded himself that losing a job didn't mean losing his worth. Back at the company, things were unraveling faster than anyone expected. Ryan's decisions started costing the company real money. He ignored warnings from senior staff, convinced that his education and last name were enough to carry him through. A major client walked away after a poorly handled project. Another threatened legal action due to missed commitments. Internal conflicts escalated as employees felt unheard and undervalued. Within 3 weeks, the company that had once thrived under steady leadership was on the edge of chaos. The chairman, who had initially supported his son's appointment with pride, began to feel the pressure. Investors demanded answers. Board members questioned decisions. The illusion of control was slipping, and reality was setting in. It was during one particularly tense meeting that Daniel's name resurfaced. A senior manager who had worked closely with him for years finally spoke up. He described how Daniel had built systems that prevented exactly the kind of problems they were now facing. He reminded everyone that Daniel had not only managed operations but had understood people, clients, employees, and the delicate balance between efficiency and empathy. Silence filled the room. For the first time, the chairman looked uncertain. Finding Daniel, however, was not as easy as expected. He had changed his routine, focusing on freelance consulting work and small projects just to make ends meet. Pride had kept him from reaching out to his former colleagues, even though he knew the company was struggling. When the call finally came, Daniel hesitated. He sat at his small kitchen table, staring at the phone long after it stopped ringing. Memories flooded back, the late nights, the sacrifices, the moment he was replaced without explanation. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to move on and never look back. But another part of him, the part that had built something meaningful, couldn't let it go. He didn't return immediately as an employee. Instead, he agreed to meet them, not out of desperation, but out of quiet confidence. The office felt different when he walked in again. The same walls, the same desks, but a completely different energy. People looked at him with a mixture of relief and regret. Some avoided eye contact, ashamed of their silence during his departure. Others nodded respectfully, acknowledging what they had lost. Daniel didn't say much. He observed. He listened. He understood. What he saw wasn't just a failing system. It was a broken culture. The company had forgotten its foundation. It had replaced trust with hierarchy, experience with entitlement, and dedication with appearances. Daniel didn't blame Ryan entirely. He saw a young man overwhelmed by expectations he didn't know how to meet, a product of privilege thrown into responsibility without guidance. Change didn't happen overnight, but it began quietly. Daniel started by fixing the small things, re-establishing communication, rebuilding trust among teams, and addressing client concerns with honesty rather than excuses. Slowly, stability returned. Employees felt heard again. Confidence grew. Even Ryan began to change. Watching Daniel work, he realized what leadership truly meant. It wasn't about authority or titles. It was about responsibility, humility, and the willingness to learn. For the first time, he stepped back and listened. At home, Daniel's life also began to shift. Opportunities opened up again, but this time he approached them differently. He wasn't chasing validation anymore. He knew his worth. More importantly, Lily saw it too. She watched her father stand tall, not because life was easy, but because he refused to let hardship define him. Just before we reach the ending, take a moment to comment one word that represents what this story means to you. The company eventually recovered, not because of a miracle, but because of a man who never lost his integrity. Even when everything else was taken from him, Daniel didn't return for revenge. He returned because he believed in building, in fixing, in giving things another chance. And sometimes that's the strongest thing a person can do. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away silently. Like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that setbacks are not the end, and subscribe to Kindness for more stories that remind us what truly matters. Because in a world that often replaces people too quickly, the ones who quietly hold everything together are the ones we should never overlook.